I don't have the bandwidth or the brain power, and I really don't care. Make a freaking decision. And that's really where the same concept on the personal side of make the decision of what we're going to have for dinner because I don't care is the same thing for me for employees of you're here as a force multiplier to make those decisions for me so I don't have to make so many of those little decisions. They're
Welcome to the Leading Lane podcast for real estate pros by real estate pros with your hosts, Ashley Frederick and Stephen Birch. If you're looking for an honest, authentic, and raw perspective, you found it.
all right. Welcome to the Leading Lane podcast. We're actually in a unique space today. Well, at least I'm in a unique space today. I'm here in Ashley's office, and I got kicked out of her office because we couldn't figure out how to, be in the same room at the same time because we're so used to being in different rooms. So I'm actually here in the back of her office, and I came up to spend the week with her and her team, and it's been a fun opportunity and learning opportunity for me as well coming up here. So, you know, I think the topic that we're going to go down is really in life and in business both there's a lot of change. There's a lot of opportunities that are presented themselves, and I think you have a choice, right? Like you can either, when something happens, you can either sit here and be the victim mentality and be, boo type of why is this happening to me, or you can pull up your boots and get in the mud and see what you can do to change and pivot, and that's really where I think that I knew that there's things that I can come up and help with, but what we're doing this week is being able to see are there different aspects, different point of views that could be implemented into your business to help you be more efficient, to be able to help your team, be more efficient and happier in their job and the role. And yeah, that's kind of the mindset of where I first want to start is you can either be down in the shits or you can say, all right, this happened, but now what are we going to do? So after this week, I mean, the last couple of days, I've been working with you and your team. Kind of give a rundown of your perspective of what's happening.
Yeah, I think that in general, when change happens, whether it's expected or unexpected, some people choose to like wallow in self-pity of why did this happen or this isn't good timing, right? But none of us have a crystal ball as to when things are going to happen. But I think that real estate changes every single day, right? Like our transactions change, laws change, people don't do what they're supposed to in a transaction, and we always have to be adjusting like on the fly, right? So I think that it's no different within your business, that things can be changing on a regular basis, and you have to be able to just go with the flow and not get stuck in the mud, if you will. A really good example of that for us was, I think it was maybe 2 years ago now, a year and a half. And we had a personnel that their husband took a job at another state. And we kind of had, two separate roles. We had an admin and we had a transaction coordinator. And I remember I called you that day too, and was like, so we weren't expecting this. And, we kind of brainstormed at that point in time. And I remember thinking we were looking to get stuff off of my plate anyway. So we changed the transaction coordinator role to be an office manager role and promoted our admin and changed the job duties, took things off of my plate, and really made that more of an office manager type role. So, right, I could have got upset or, left it how it was as far as admin and transaction coordinator, but really we took it as an opportunity to reevaluate everyone's goals and everyone's duties. And I mean, now 2 years later, it's fully transitioned into, something that works extremely well. And I think that that's what I would encourage people is whatever might happen, a job change, et cetera. Agents, I mean, I think you've had that in your area too, where agents are part of they're a spouse of the military and they end up getting relocated, right? And maybe they played an integral role in your team, but you just have to shift with them and figure out if it's more of an opportunity to do things different. What I've appreciated is we always talk about you don't know what you don't know. and that I think will be true forever. But also just getting someone else's opinion or an outsider's look of this is the way I see it. Did you mean for it to look like this? Is this what your end goal was? And I think just being able to have open conversations with you and with the staff. I think one good thing we had this week, we happened to have an events committee meeting, and I can see the sun is all over my face. I won't complain about sunshine after the 7 inches of snow last night, but welcome to Wisconsin, by the way.
I was expecting that.
Um, so sometimes I attend those, sometimes I don't. That was also something I think that you and I had talked about maybe a year ago that was eating up a lot of my time, was trying to plan events. So we are an extremely community-minded real estate organization. There are events that we do, like parades and festivals and community events and office parties. And it's just it probably could be someone's full-time job if we really wanted it to be. So we tasked that basically to volunteers, and it ended up that I was actually surprised. I remember when I asked, and I think 4 agents raised their hand like immediately that they wanted to be part of the events committee. And I was like, fantastic. Someone else that wants to do those things, and they're all creative. It gives them, I think, more purpose in the office too. And so we've had they've done a great job. We're about to hit the craziness of event season between upcoming parade, a customer appreciation, the famous Luke Day, Hub City Days. It's like this 4-month golfing, 4-month window of just a frenzy. So we had an events meeting this week, and sometimes I just sit in to attend. But it was kind of fun to have you sit in as well and kind of watch how the meetings are ran, and then to be able to give advice to the rest of the staff and agents as to maybe other ways to improve those meetings. We implemented a separate group on Blink that is just for committees this week, just for that committee. We've already been using it to plan the next client appreciation. So it's just something simple that, unless someone's from the outside looking in, you wouldn't necessarily know there's other options.
Yeah, and I think that too, some of the times we get in the rhythm of, hey, we do this event every single year. We have it down like, you guys have it down like clockwork. You have fantastic attendance, everybody's having fun, great feedback from your clients and the community. And being there, that's great, but how do we add and stack on to that to the next level? And not meaning that you need to bring in a Ferris wheel this next time and make it over the top like that, but how
That's a
do
great
we,
idea.
yeah, how do we maximize it to where you can, the reason why you're doing these events, yes, is to give back to your community, but really we're in business as well. So how do we market this properly to ensure that we can make this into a marketing event, not just an event, event that we're giving back to the community? How do we take these guests that are attending and now make them the marketers for Next Home Hub City? And that's really the end goal of, we want them to engage on our social. We want them to tag us in those different things. How do we continue this relationship online and virtually when we have such a great presence on a physical level, getting people to these events? And I think when I shared that to the gals, all of their faces were like, oh, yeah, that's right. Okay, here we go. Like, and then just the snowball effect of how that, went into the next idea, into how we can make this more efficient. And really, the goal is, again, going back to efficiency. I remember the first time we did a major event, I was the one trying to do everything. I was the one running around with my head cut off, and I was not delegating properly, and so that meant none of my agents, none of my staff knew exactly what was going on. And I think that the goal when we get in front of people for these events is to have the calm, cool, collected, feel the poise, show that the event went off without a hitch. And this is the prime opportunity for agents in your team to be able to have conversations with their clients and customers and the community out there. So how do we make it to where it's not so physical work labor intensive, and now it is more impactful and intentional conversations with your clients? So that was really fun to be able to see those light bulbs go off in that room for that.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons. That's one of the reasons I truly love the events, is that everybody's running at 100 miles an hour, including our clients. And, sometimes we just don't get a chance to see them. So this is an opportunity that like they know like they're coming. We get to spend, even if it's 20 minutes catching up. It's just a great opportunity. But it's just funny how then, you're top of mind and then you end up getting a referral from them like 3 weeks later, right? So it's just funny. That's not necessarily like the quote unquote goal. I mean, we really do enjoy seeing them, but we have to remember that, that they are appreciated. We appreciate the business they give us and that they continue to support us.
Absolutely. So, when working with your team here too, one of the things that I have done in conversations with you and them as well individually is tapping into what they like to do, and really picking the brain of like what is going well, what's not going well, where do you want to be able to go in the future. So we, not intentionally, this was not planned, but we started in giving them a template, your W-2 staff, your employees, a template of a job description, for them to create and reevaluate their current job descriptions and roles. How do you think that has set in with them, and what are your thoughts on the job description, making your team write that out for themselves?
Well, and I think it's interesting because we've had job descriptions, right? Like everyone has a job description, but I think interesting for them to pull it out too and maybe see how much things have changed, throughout the year when other things have happened, right? Like we've shifted. So maybe an office manager was doing something, we shifted it to an admin. So that was on their job description. It isn't anymore, but now we added XYZ to the job description. So I think for them, it was maybe a good reevaluation of what their expectations are, what their roles are. And then again, for us to be able to change things, or maybe they realized, like you said, like, I'm not really good at this. I don't really enjoy doing that. Does that make sense for someone else to do that? So I hope also that it's somewhat empowering for them to be able to help, create that role and make sure it is something that they're comfortable with, that they're good at doing, and that the right people are in the right position.
And so, like, in doing that, um, my goal is kind of to overlap all of these different job descriptions and really see if there's anything. Do we have too many people doing a certain type of task? Do we have 3 employees working solely on the events? And not making one person in charge of it, or whatever it's going to be. And because we think we know what our team does, they think that, oh, it's not that big of a deal. And I have to say that I sometimes think, oh, it's not that big of a deal. I just do it. It's not, it's a small task. But those really small tasks now compounded together create the inefficiency. And now we're paying multiple people to get one job done, and we're not all going in the same direction. So I think that once you are able to document it in that manner, for yourself as the leader, and then you can have them document what they are actually doing, what they want to do, you can really start putting the puzzle pieces together. And what it's doing is, I think it's actually removing the assumption. And I say this all the time. Anytime that you assume, you make an ass out of you and me. So that you want to make sure that we're not assuming that they know that they need to do X, Y, Z, or them assuming that we don't need to know certain types of things, because that can snowball that direction as well. So I just think the documentation, clear is kind, unclear is unkind, really streamlines and creates the empowering and confidence in your team for them to know exactly what they should be doing. Um,
I think on the
Go
confidence
ahead, I'm sorry.
piece too, on the confidence piece, I think that I appreciate that, the staff and the agents, you know, want to they want to make us happy and what our expectations are. But I think helping with them with that confidence, and that I trust them to make those decisions, and that they don't have to come to me for an okay on every type of thing. But right, we also realized that for them to do their jobs better, we need to have a set budget for events, so that that's not coming back to ask, can I buy this, this, and this? When if we already have the budget, they can just go ahead, and I trust them that they're making those decisions. So it's a good evaluation, not just for what they're doing, but for what I've portrayed, to them to be able to do.
Yeah, I mean, you're creating a critical thinking team. They have the resources available to them. It's very clear on what their parameters are. And if it's something that steps outside of those parameters, then that is something to be raised up to you versus what kind of bag of chips would you like me to buy? I don't freaking care, right? Like, at least I don't care. You're in charge of this. Like, go and do it within your budget. That's something that you guys want. That's fantastic. And, are there times, I mean, do I have a preference of types of chips that I want? Sure. And could I tell them exactly what to go do? Absolutely. And what I've learned over the years is I have to keep my mouth shut and I have to empower them with making that decision and the follow through. And, it very well may be something that I see that's kind of a beige flag, right? Like not really a red flag yet, but I wouldn't have done it that way. And the beauty of this is they get to learn because when that event actually happens, everything kicks off or whatever this is going to be. It kicks off and it happens to be completely windy and we have nachos flying all over the place and trash all over the place and we don't have trash cans, like all of those little details. When we do our recap after the event and we do a debrief, and we get to ask those questions. And now, as the leader, I get to say, hey, what about this? We didn't have the trash can there available, or what about the wind? We didn't take that into effect, or the cheese was cold, or whatever the little types of things. And then now they are making notes. And what we like to do is put everything on Asana for that debrief. So the next time that we do this event next year, we know that we don't like the nachos. We would need to go with something a little bit different, or whatever the small little task is. But if I would have told them exactly what to do from the very beginning, they would have asked me how much cheese needs to go in the cup. They would have asked me, do they want the white tortilla chips or the yellow ones? Or, I mean, then it gets down to all these nitty gritty details. They are more than capable, and I trust them to get everything completed. I don't need to make those decisions for them. They can do it.
Yeah, I think that I had got an email like before our orange party, just asking what type of drinks I wanted, and I just wrote back and said I fully believe that you can pick out the types of drink that you think everybody will enjoy. We've had these parties before, so a little bit of everything for everybody, and I think they were like super excited because they had we didn't have a lot of extras, like it was like almost perfect amount of um, drinks for everyone, and I was like, see, you did just fine.
And so like, and then that goes right into like, we have a roster of what everybody's preferences of drinks are. So I know exactly each person in our team, right? So now I don't have to ask every single time. I mean, we do multiple events. And so that goes back to that efficiency side of things. Instead of trying to remember how much did I order last year, or for our Christmas party, like what is the bar order? How many bottles of this do I need to get? What kind of wine do I need to get? What does she like to drink? Like, I don't want it. Those are so many freaking decisions I, as a leader, do not want to make. Um,
Mhm.
and kind of a side note here, Mel Robbins is one of my favorite people to follow. And on the drive up here, I started the Let Them book. But I've listened to her podcast, and this one, most recent one that I listened to, talks about a study about how the average person makes 35,000 decisions a day. 35,000 decisions. That's the average person. An average person doesn't run multiple companies. An average person doesn't have multiple employees, right? So I'm going to have to say that let's just double that. And so when we have those many decisions that we have to make day in and day out, those little decisions of what do I want for dinner, right? Like, what do you want to do tonight? Like, these types of things, I don't have the bandwidth or the brain power, and I really don't care. Make a freaking decision. And that's really where the same concept on the personal side to make the decision of what we're going to have for dinner, because I don't care, is the same thing for me for employees of you're here as a force multiplier to make those decisions for me so I don't have to make so many of those little decisions. They're important. I don't want to degrade them, but I don't want to make them. That's what you are here for, to help me and force multiply what I am great at. So just a little tangent on Mel Robbins there.
Well, and I think that that's where we've talked about before, like decision fatigue comes in, right? Like, that's why when I get home for dinner and then ask what I want, like I literally don't care at this point in time because I am fatigued out of making the decisions. But you mentioned the force multiplier. So, do you want to just tell us a little bit about that book?
Yeah, it's actually a really great book. Charles is the one that pushed that over to me and recommended the book to me. And really, it talks a lot about an executive assistant. And for me, like I removed the titles because I think that you can have that you don't need necessarily just an executive decision or executive assistant. You can have multiple different people, and including your spouse, your partner, be a force multiplier. And really, what it is that you need to hire towards your weaknesses and get those different things. And there's difference of weaknesses. I'm not good at it. There also is I'm good at it, but I don't want to really let go of it. And that's really the hard part of you have to let go of the things that you like to do, even though that it's not maximizing your time and potential. Really, with the force multiplier, your employees or these people that are helping you should be taking your weaknesses, pushing you towards your strengths so that you can continuously and repeatedly do what brings in the revenue and generates the revenue and grows and scales the business. So they're really the workforce, right? Like I do not like doing the compliance review of a file. Drives me flipping nuts. My brain goes too much. I can't jump between different files and then try to track everything. And so one of the first things I did was hire somebody to be able to help with the compliance side of things. And that was Kim. And we have grown together. And then eventually I knew that, okay, Kim, you've learned way much. You're like so great at this. You actually clicking through and say yes, no is not utilizing you to your fullest potential. And I know now that your brain, you can do it, but that's not what your brain enjoys doing. So then we put a VA underneath her to be able to force multiply her, which then allowed her to force multiply me even more. So I think it's the hierarchy and structuring it properly into where you are always pushing and restructuring your people's positions to ensure that they're working towards their strengths, working towards your weaknesses. And then you continue to grow in a parallel direction for where you want to take the company.
Yeah,
What are
I
your insights on the force multiplier? I mean, you read it a couple times, right?
it's been a while, so I need to reread it. We actually put it on. I think I told Caitlin and Jessica to both read it, but I think it's really more so what you're talking about as far as the things that you don't like to do, the things you're not good at. But I also think it's like not necessarily having training staff to think for you, but knowing your expectations, knowing the things that you expect to be done, on a regular basis, so that those are done, and then it's just more or less like this yin yang type of we're all working together, so we get to that next level. And I think that sometimes we think we're good at something, and then we task it out and we actually realize that somebody else is better at it or more efficient at it, or maybe we could do it, but it took us longer. So I think it's just always evaluating yourself, and then also just always helping your staff to evaluate if they're still enjoying what they were hired to do, if we don't want to change tasks, if it makes sense for someone else to do in the time frames of where everything else is at. So, I don't think that you can continue to grow as a team or grow as a company unless you're willing to have those kind of hard looks into your business.
Yeah. And no, I think that we talk a lot about tasks of the force multiplying. And I do agree with that still 100% because can I go and still do compliance work? Of course I can. Do I want to? No. But really what I think force multiplies me now is my team anticipating my next move. And I think that anticipation is something that we don't talk about in the business world of And how do you teach somebody to anticipate your next move? Because let's be very clear, you and I are not very good at we don't even know necessarily what our next move is. We're going to pop into whatever, feels good at the moment and move that direction. And that may not be something we should be working on. I guess I should say you're very efficient in that manner. Um, but like, how do you teach the anticipation of, you have them be able to look into the future for you? And what I mean by that, and it's funny that we're kind of talking about this, is that yesterday we were talking with Caitlin about closing gifts. How do we get her to be able to see, and she knows that these are the XYZ closings that are coming up, and we don't have to say, get this closing gift. She's more than happy to do it. She does a freaking rock job of it. Her video that she posted yesterday of the putting the baskets together. But how do we teach somebody anticipation? And I think really what it is you have to create the relationship. You and Caitlin's relationship is phenomenal. I think, she can read your freaking mind and know what's going to happen. And one of the things you said yesterday is don't be afraid to push me a little bit more. So you're giving her permission to now, okay, anticipate a little bit more, push and shove. And that really is pushing you to grow as an individual and as a leader too. Um, but what do you feel that how do you feel that your business and life would be different if you had everybody around you anticipating your next move? What I'm going to say the caveat to that's really freaking scary. That if that many people can think for me, but we're creatures of habit. So how do you think that would how do you think that would change your business?
I think it wouldn't only change business, but I think it would also change some personal things as well. So we talk a lot about stress, and I think that stress is a misused word, if you will, because there are good types of stress, there are bad types of stress, so stress in a transaction, like that, to me, like that is what it is at this point in time. But there's other stresses that we don't necessarily have control over, like I've been sick for a while, right? Like that's a stress that we don't have control over, that you realize that ends up affecting everything else, right? But if you have people firing on all cylinders, and even like at home, right? Like we talk about, if Ben's meal prepping for me, and if Ben is running all these errands, that then I'm not leaving work, constantly throughout the day. Or now Caitlin's not running those errands and she's doing more stuff at the office, right? So if you kind of get people in these lanes, if you will, of helping everyone on taking things off of each other's plates, I think that for me, it gives me the ability for my mind to rest a little bit. And when your mind can rest is when you can actually plan for bigger moves. As far as that's recruiting or different roles that we've discussed that we haven't, actually hired for. So I think that when you're like bogged down with all of the small day-to-day things that maybe don't bring you joy or get in the way, then I think you're just kind of holding yourself back from what that next step looks like. So I think that we've done a really good job at the girls here picking up a lot of those smaller type of things. I think I'm excited for the next 60 days, just as far as some goals that we have, what that might look like, putting them in more of, not like a captain seat, but, like a ability and confidence to make decisions. Obviously I tell people, like, I wouldn't have put you in those roles if I didn't feel like you had the capability to do those things. But I think that what it does for me too is it gives me the opportunity to look at things as the brokerage as a whole. So when I am like stepped back and have some extra time, like what are the things I can do here? What are extra trainings that we can do? Have Stephen come in, those types of things, which then you're looking at a big picture in my mind just continues to elevate everyone else to the next level. So I think it's just important for people to watch other people. And if you see someone struggling somewhere, or maybe you see it takes them like 2 hours to create a Canva design, but it takes you 15 minutes. Like, is there a way that you could just help someone? Hey, I do it this way and this doesn't take me any time. So I think on the backside of that too, like you need people to be open to receiving those types of suggestions as well.
Absolutely. And again, like it goes back to that relationship. If you don't have a solid relationship with your team, then they're not going to be open-minded, open-hearted to receive any sort of criticism or feedback or suggestions whatsoever. And I think also as a leader, you have to be vulnerable. And in order, like, you need to be vulnerable, in my opinion, to be able to have them understand where you are, and they may have making assumptions about you already, and they can be completely off kilter, and they need to know ground you, and then ground with you, and then being vulnerable of this is how I feel, this is where I want to go. And a really great book is the Domino Effect. Nick, can't think of his last name at the moment. It really talks about how, as a leader, you go through. The analogy he uses is really great, actually. Is, if you have somebody that is going to follow you in a car that's never been to Marshfield and has following you in a snowstorm, has no clue where we are. And, if you went just like you normally would go, your regular route, and you would be going, 50 miles per hour, and I would be going 30 miles per hour, saying like, where in the world am I going? If you don't use your turn signal, I'd be stressed out. If you don't, slow down to make that turn, and I try to just turn it, whip it around really quickly, I'd be in the ditch in your front yard, right? So the analogy he uses is think of leadership just like if somebody is behind you, following you in your vehicle, you have to slow down, right? You have to be able to turn your turn signal on. If you gave them all the instructions in the world right up front, they would be overwhelmed, shut down, never be able to get to the destination that you're trying to achieve, right? So the goal really is to be able to give them little cues. You're watching in the rearview mirror, making sure that they're following close enough. If they get too far behind you, you're going to slow down just a little bit enough to make sure that they can catch up. If the yellow light turns on, you're going to slow down to make sure that they don't get stopped at that red light. So I really love that analogy aspect of, as a leader, you don't have to tell them everything. You don't have to make sure that they know every single step and all the processes right now. But you do need to make sure that you are slow enough for them to follow you properly. You're giving them the correct signals and signs, and making sure that they're not going to end up in a ditch. And sometimes you have to course correct a little bit and pivot, and that's okay. And sometimes with a detour, and that's okay too. You just need to make sure you're constantly communicating back to your team. And I think that vulnerability and that insight then creates the relationship, and then which in turn is actually getting the anticipation that we're needing from them to start thinking, and how would Stephen, how would Ashley do this task?
And I think it's a matter of getting in the trenches with them as well. Most people know here that like the back storage room is, I can't, like it drives me insane. It's, normally like after an event, everything just kind of gets like thrown in there, and then you'll go in there for something else, and then you like can't find anything. It was really difficult when we
You
moved.
have that too?
Yeah. It's gotten better, but I think like they knew that I came in on a weekend one time I just like my brain couldn't handle the unorganized part of it anymore. And I think I emptied out like 5, Tupperware bins and just threw a bunch of trash away that we didn't really need, was old, was, rickety or whatnot. And then I think, one came in on Monday and was like, "Were you in the back room?" And it's like, "Yeah, I was. I just couldn't I wasn't done." But it's funny that like that week I didn't go back in, but it got done. You know what I mean? So I think that them seeing like that it frustrated me enough that I put some extra time into it, then they saw that, they would make some extra time in their schedules to get it back to where it should be.
What you're doing is you're stepping up and taking the initiative to help a team member.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if I have to clean the toilet in the bathroom, I'll clean it. I have no freaking problem getting down there and doing in the dirty work of everything, because I think that shows that we're not too good to do these different things. The difference is, if you're not cleaning it and you're never, stepping up to take the initiative to help anybody else, then that's a different story, right? Like, I want to make sure that I'm not doing your job and paying you for me doing your job. I'm here to help 100%. So
Well, it's
it
even like
definitely,
the floors, it's salt this time of the year. It sucks. It drags through this gross film or whatever. But again, it's like this, I get this fix of things that I don't like and then I have to fix them. So I came in and it was disgusting. So I just went and I grabbed the Swiffer and I Swiffered it. And then two people were like, oh my gosh, I can do that. And I was like, no big deal, but then it's funny because the next 2 days somebody else was doing it. So I think it's just a kind reminder and a way of showing people maybe what you would like them to look for, or the things that bother you. And then they realize oh, I should have noticed that those floors look really bad for a first impression, but until maybe someone else notices it.
you're leading by example.
Yeah.
That's what you're doing. And it's so funny. Did you do that on Tuesday?
What's that?
The floors?
Mm-mm.
Oh, well, because I came in on, I think it was Tuesday, and I said, Caitlin, how do you guys keep these floors so freaking clean? We can never keep our office this clean, and we have the same freaking floors. So I just think that's really funny that,
Oh, we have a cleaning lady on Sunday, so she does fantastic. But yeah, I think it was even when we were prepping for the orange party last week, I saw 2 different people out with the Swiffers beforehand. So yeah, I think you're right. Just leading by example, and I think that also just leads into when you continue to do the leading by example, and maybe people aren't understanding, or people aren't taking the initiative. I think that that's always just a good time to kind of keep a mental note of people that that are following, that are picking up, maybe people that need a gentle reminder, or at some point in time maybe that's not the right role for that person, or not the right fit for the company in general.
100%. And, with the aspect of all of this is leading by example. We started with, sometimes there's challenges that are presented to you that you never expect in business and in life. And if you as the leader is out there frantically flaring and running around with your head cut off, your team is going to follow that. It's perfectly a-okay to say, man, this is really shitty timing. This stuff sucks right now, but you know what? All of us are together. Let's work together, and you're leading them into the positivity and them to be able to see the future and the opportunity that it's actually really presenting. Then that trickle effect happens way quicker, in my opinion. I think if you were to go the opposite direction and you were to be negative, that toxicity would be so much more infectious and stick way longer. So that's why we always have to have that positive, or as much as we can, have that positive outlook. Because for whatever reason, sometimes that positivity in others dimmers out way quicker than what that toxicity can stick to the rest of the team. So.
Well, I have to say, I'm very, very lucky with my team. I mean, we've had to, over the last 5 years, we've had to let, I think, figured it out, maybe 5 people go for different reasons. And what I've always appreciated is that there's never been a question as to why, what happened, nothing. And then literally, it's the next day, I'll get a message of what can I do to help? And then we just see people, you've seen it this week, people stepping up and doing things they wouldn't normally do. And, and I never asked. So I just think that it goes to say a lot about our group as a whole, that everyone supports each other. And I'm really lucky to have the team behind me that I do.
You have an amazing team. I mean, really do. From the staff to the ownership to the other agents in here, everybody really, I think it's so cliche that because it's used so often, but it's so true here in your office. But you guys really are a family, and it's great to see that everybody shares those same expectations and standards. And you guys have really created a center of excellence here.
Yeah. And I think that they appreciate, that we always do want to do better. There's always ways to improve. I know that Stephen's going to lead a training later on today, and everyone is super excited to see what that's going to entail. So I think, I enjoy that they find that, we're trying to make things easier or more efficient for them. And sometimes I think it's just a matter of when we start having those types of questions for them, they start thinking a little bit more outside the box and coming to the table with new thoughts and new ideas. So I appreciate that everyone's always willing to just run with whatever I throw them and random guests that show up.
You're a great leader, and I think that this is a great timing. Everything is lining up, and as always, the universe has a fun way to make things happen when they need to and when they're supposed to.
Yes, and always extremely thankful for you and your friendship and your leadership as well.
Of course, of course. Thanks for having me. All right. As always, guys, if you have any topics or any suggestions of people that should be a guest on our podcast, please reach out. Let us know. We would love to hear from you, and tune in next time.
If you've enjoyed today's episode, please like, subscribe, and share with others. Stay connected for more genuine insights and strategies to boost your real estate career on Facebook or check out our website. We'll see you next time.